Okay, oh, I'm very loud, I think, sorry. So, all of you are wake up right now, okay? Yeah, a warm, or better say a hot welcome also from me to the last talk this afternoon. Before I introduce myself, I want to get to know of you. Maybe I have some, so for that I have some questions. Who of you would familiarize him or would call himself a developer? Most of the guys, okay. Who would say he's more in ops, in operations? Okay, so maybe it's 1/3, 2/3. Who thinks he's both? So DevOps. Okay. And who thinks he's none of them? 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm fine with that. As you may guess, I'm talking about GitOps, and maybe it sounds a little bit familiar. It's probably a little bit like DevOps, but based on Git. So we will see how that works. So I'm introducing GitOps by Jenkins-X. Jenkins-X is a Jenkins running in Kubernetes, and so my next question would be: who's familiar with Kubernetes or running Kubernetes? A lot of people? Okay, that's great. Because I will not go into much details. We have had already very nice talks today about Kubernetes and a lot of the other stuff I'm touching. So, for instance, Helm or Scaffold or some other things. And I'm trying to bring all of these things together in the Jenkins-X world. So let's start with me. My name is Gerd Aschemann. I'm a freelancer from the Rhine-Main area, close to Frankfurt. I'm usually working with large companies like Deutsche Bahn or Deutsche Bank or some other German companies, Deutsche Lufthansa, etc. Deutsche Telekom, you name it, everything which starts with Deutsche is one of my customers. And I'm a co-organizer of the Java user group in Darmstadt, and also of the Javaland conference. And for the Javaland conference, we have written an open source conference planner, the Ducon project, and I'm using it sometimes to try out new ideas, etc. So let's see. Who of you is only here for the stickers? Okay, you will get one. The others don't, right? Okay, a second one. Okay, and I also have some of these nice T-shirts from. Okay, you don't want one or no? Unfortunately, they were not tailored for German developers because I only got sizes S, M, and L. So, if you want one, come back to me later. I only have 5 left, so the first 5 people or the first 5 good questions will get one. Okay, so let's see. So about Jenkins-X, I will give you a small promise and then ask some questions what the promise means or what is behind it. And of course, I will also give some answers to that questions. And then I will split up the talk into 2 parts. The first is about Jenkins-X, more in general, how it works and what it does. And then about GitOps as a methodology, which is implemented by Jenkins-X. Of course, you can run or you can implement GitOps by other technologies. My current customer is using plain GitLab CI to implement GitOps. There is a tool from Weaveworks which is implementing GitOps, but I will explain it by means of Jenkins-X. It's an opinionated tool which implements GitOps, but also a lot of other things. And then I will give a small overview about the features and the roadmap of Jenkins-X, and I have some demos. And the good news is that this is the last talk, so we have plenty of time, maybe 3 or 4 hours for some demos. I think you just get yourself a beer and make yourself comfortable then, and we can have some demos afterwards. Okay, so the promise. Jenkins-X is all about automation. I think you have heard that term already today. In fact, it's only a command line tool. So you just install a command line tool and then you get everything else by this command line tool. So we'll see how that works later. It sets up a Kubernetes. If you don't have one, it sets up a Jenkins, of course. It sets up everything else. It sets up tools, repositories. It implements some processes, the so-called GitOps workflow, etc. And everything is just coming out of this tiny little command line tool. And yeah, we will see. I have a demo how it works. So to give you a short overview, probably we start here. Is it large enough? Probably. No, come on. No, the other way around. Okay. Pardon? It's okay for the first row? Okay. So I'm happy for the first row. So normally we have a Kubernetes. It has different namespaces, or we say environments. Let's say it has a preview environment, and you already see there are lots of preview environments. So probably for every developer and every branch and everything you build in your development system, you get a new environment or a new namespace. Then we have some kind of a staging environment and a production environment. These are only the default environments of Jenkins-X. So it's not restricted to that, and you can introduce more testing, acceptance testing, load testing, etc. environments if you want. This is just the default rollout. And how does the development process work with Jenkins-X? Well, usually you have some code in a Git repository. The default is in GitOps. Then if you check in some code or push some code into it, Jenkins will check it out, build it, create an application out of it, deploy it to one of these environments, in the normal case to the preview environment. Then you can do some testing, either manually or automated, which is the preferred way, of course. And as soon as your code is stable, and you think you might merge it into your master branch, you do a pull request, Jenkins merges it into the master branch, and then deploys it in a second or in an additional step to your staging environment. And in the staging environment or any other test environment, of course, you can also do some testing, etc., some quality assurance. And if you're finally satisfied, you promote it to the production environment. As you may have heard from that, the promotion to the production environment is usually done manually. You can also do it automatically. The tool provides or supports both modes. You can have a lot of automatic environments like the staging, etc., and also a lot of manual environments, and just promote your application into that environment. And this is what I will cover in this talk. So how does it work with Jenkins-X? So let's start with a developer perspective. As a developer, the only thing I would like to do is to get into Kubernetes. I don't care about all the infrastructure and all the other things. I just want to deploy or code my application and get it into Kubernetes. So what do I have to do for that? If I ask my ops guy, they say, oh, it's very simple. Just follow some simple rules and we get everything into the Kubernetes or into the cloud environment. If we are a Java developer, we have to start with some Maven builds. Maybe some of you know that. So we start setting up a Maven or NPM or whatever build by writing a POM XML, thinking about how can we build and deploy an artifact to some repository. We still do not know how to get it into Kubernetes, etc. So we have to ask ourselves several questions, and the operations guide will take us by the hand and lead us through this process. Maybe we need a Maven repository to upload our artifacts or to cache some artifacts from the internet, etc. So a lot of stuff. Once we have our Maven build finished, the operator says, okay, now you need to build a Docker image. The same process as before. We need to set up a Docker build. We have to write a Docker file. We have probably to use Maven or Scaffold or Jib or any other tool to build the Docker image. Then we have to think about how do we get the Docker image into the registry? How do we get the image to Kubernetes? How do we set up the Docker registry, etc., etc. So a lot of things we have to do upfront before we can really do our development. Maybe if we just want to get a walking skeleton, so a simple empty application into Kubernetes, we have to do a lot of things as a developer. Next step would be we have the Docker image ready. Now we want to deploy it to Kubernetes. The operator says, okay, the latest hype is Helm charts. Just provide a Helm chart for your application, and then we are almost done, and you get it into Kubernetes. So we have to set up Helm. We have to write deployment configurations. We could do that manually. We have to write a different YAML files, etc., and combine everything into a Helm chart. Again, a step of a few hours or a few days if we do that on our own. We probably need a chart repository. Helm charts live in a chart repository. We need to set up a chart repository. So we have the third repositories. We have the Maven repository, the Docker registry, the chart repository, and we still do not have our application in Kubernetes. So as soon as this is done, we have to think about additional steps. We have to set up an integration or production environment to get our application running. You remember I had this staging and production environments in Jenkins-X. I have to think about how we cope with multiple applications, in particular if they interdependent. So if one application depends on another application, you have to ensure that both are deployed in a certain version, etc. We have to cope with different configurations for every environment. We have to set up a lot of other infrastructure, maybe databases, messaging, UIs, monitoring, etc., etc. A lot of things we have to run until we get ready in production with our application. Probably you have to set up multiple Kubernetes clusters. Maybe you have a development cluster, a staging cluster, a production cluster, etc. You have to handle all of that. So how does JenkinsX run all of it? Let's have a look. Yeah, a short overview of how Jenkins works internally. JenkinsX is on the one hand, it's running the build processes, so the overall build process in Kubernetes as build pod, and additionally, it allows to handle all of the infrastructure setup. So it's just executing, or it itself consists of a lot of Helm charts for Jenkins and all of the repositories, and JenkinsX is able to bootstrap itself by adding the Kubernetes everything to the Kubernetes API server. So the central point is still a Kubernetes API server, and then JenkinsX consists of a build controller and several other components which are added to the Kubernetes API server. They are registered as a custom resource definition and extend the Kubernetes API server. And then it's controlled in the end by the command line interface, or probably by user interface, but the common way is to control it by the command line interface. As I said in the beginning, it's just a command line tool to rule everything in this universe. So, as I said, it uses some repository. For instance, GitHub is the default, but it can also run with several other Git providers. It sets up a Nexus. It could also run with Artifactory, but the default is Nexus. It starts a Docker registry. If there isn't a registry provided by your cloud provider, it starts the chart museum, etc., and sets up all of these tools and all of this infrastructure. And how is all of this done? Well, the command line call you execute here is something like the first one here. You just call JX create cluster here on a GKE environment, so it's the Google Cloud Kubernetes engine. There are several other Kubernetes providers. I have a list later on, and this takes, in Google Cloud, the default environment takes a setup of 10, 12, 15 minutes. So we will not make a demo here. I have already provided everything before, so we can just check if, come on. We can just check JX status. I hope it works. Come on. No internet today? Okay, interesting. I hope everything works. It has, while I prepared everything for the demo, but you see that, yeah, the cluster seems to be ready. It contains 3 nodes with around 40 gigabytes of memory, some virtual CPUs, etc. And the JX create, which I called before, this is funny. Creates this small Kubernetes cluster in the Google Cloud Engine. I could also have set up the Kubernetes manually or by means of some mechanisms of the Google Cloud Engine, and then I would only call JX install, and it would install Jenkins-X with all components in the Google Cloud environment, in the defined cluster, which is already there. So this is the starting point. Then I have some Jenkins-X running, and now we can see how we will use it as a as a developer. So yeah, this is my list of Kubernetes providers. I think you see more or less all of the familiar ones: IBM, Amazon, Google. You can run it locally in a Minikube or Minishift environment on OpenShift, of course, and you can also run it on premise. I have very good experience with the Hetzner Cloud. Yeah, you can run it on Azure, etc. So it's running on almost any Kubernetes provider. And now, if we have set up the environment, or if we have set up Jenkins-X, we can start building an application. So we could either create, for instance, a Spring Boot application. I will do that. I have prepared a small script already. It's executing JX create Spring, as I showed on the slide, and then it has some parameters. For instance, I just give it a name, JX demo, with the current date and time, just for demo purposes. So it's nothing special. And some additional parameters like which Git username I want to use, or which GitHub organization I'm using, etc. And now we can start it, and it would ask some additional questions. For instance, it again asks which organization I would like to use. Okay, and then I have to enter a name for the repository. Yes, I want to initialize Git, and I do some initial commit, and then I get a new repository in GitHub, and we will also, you can see it over here, it will create a lot of files like this. It creates a Docker file, for instance. It creates a Jenkins file for the build process. It creates an Helm chart for the application, etc., etc. It creates a POM file for Maven, a scaffold configuration, and it creates the application itself. So just an empty application which does more or less nothing. There is no other code inside. So we can see. So it's running, and now we could check if it builds. So you see it's all command line tools. I just try to get the build log from my application. Okay. And now a standard Maven build is starting, and some Docker build is starting, just like we have it in the in the Jenkins file described. I will show you a little bit later how that looks like. So now it's building. It's very strange that. If I have an already existing application, I can just import it. So I just go to the respective directory and call in JX import, and then it also creates all of these files to run the application and imports it into JenkinsX. Now we skip that. So now in the background, the application is running or is building, and we can check here. Probably can have a look into the existing applications. I had prepared an application this morning, and this morning you see it here. It's from or this afternoon at 2 o'clock. This application is already built within the environment and is already working. And the application is deployed to my staging environment. You can see it over here. It's you see this is the staging environment, and I can just call it, can just open it, and now come on. Okay, so here we have this hello world. Normally it's empty. This is already my demo application, which is a very simple hello world application over here. And yeah, this was the prepared state. And this is the prepared state, and it's already put into the staging environment, and we can also have a look into the Jenkins for that. So we see this application. It's still building. This is just the same as we can see here. So the build process is still running, and yes, it's currently built, and then it's automatically staged, because if in the normal build process I usually do not have any errors. It's just a walking skeleton, and the application now is deployed to the staging environment, and this works in the following way with GitOps, well, with JenkinsX. It's implementing a GitOps process, and the GitOps process foresees that besides the Helm chart of the application, we have an additional Helm chart which describes the environment, and we can have a look into it in a few minutes. And for every environment, like here we have the staging environment, the preview environments, or the staging environment, or the production environment. We do have a Git repository which contains the Helm chart for this particular environment. In the initial stage, it is empty. It just contains an expose controller. And as soon as a new application comes into the scene, the Helm chart is changed by JenkinsX automatically, and the Helm chart is extended by a new dependency. So we can just look into it. It looks like this. It puts everything into a directory under my home directory. So we have the environments, and here we have the staging environment, and as I said, it's just a Git repository, and it contains a file, requirements, and here you see the requirements file contains the two expose controllers, or the expose controller and the cleanup controller, and the application itself. And what Git does, or what JenkinsX does, it's just adding the 3 lines below, and then lets Helm execute the deployment. So Helm sets up the new application within the new environment. And this is the same process for every environment. So it's interesting. You tell me you have 10 minutes. You tell me I have 5. So who's right? 10? Okay, I'm fine with that. Okay, this is done automatically here for the staging environment, and for the production environment, as I said in the beginning, it's not done automatically. And then we have the Jenkins in between. The Jenkins executes the Helm chart from the particular environment, from the Git repository, and promotes the change to the particular staging environment. So now we should be able to see JX get applications. Yes. Now we should see that the lower one I have already prepared in the afternoon. That was my first application, and now there is a new application, the JX demo, which I started 5 minutes ago, and it's also applied to the staging environment. We can see it from the namespace here, and also from the URLs. So there is a version 001, and it's deployed to the staging environment. And now I should be able to just open the new application. Yes, and it's not running Hello World as my prepared one. It's an empty walking skeleton, as I said. And this is just the normal Hello World of a Spring Boot application. It's just an error page. But we could also ask for the health status if we want actuator health. So it's up. So this is a Spring Boot application running in Kubernetes. So if we want to put that into production, I'm skipping some slides. I said I have to do that manually, so I can just call another command line command. So we could just so here we go, and then I could just do something like JX promote and production. Version 001. I would like to get this version into my production environment. What JenkinsX now does, it's issuing a change to the Git repository for the production environment. With this change, running the pull request in the background, you see we still get some warnings because it's pulling for the pull request for the status of the pull request. But we could also have a look into the pull request over here, I hope. So we can see it in GitHub. So it's just the pull request which says, okay, I want to deploy the JX demo application of version 001 into my production environment. And yeah, we could also have a look into this on the pipeline. The pipeline is just building the pull request. Sorry. It's just building the pull request, and we can have a look into it. Yeah, it's rolling out the Helm chart over here. And as soon as it's finished, we should be able to see the new application in production. So what does JenkinsX provide? It's a command line tool, 5, okay. It's a command line tool, as I said. It's running on OS X and Linux, also on Windows. I have had some problems with Windows, but it soon should stabilize also on Windows 10, of course. It sets up almost everything. As I said, it sets up a development environment with previews. We could have a small demo afterwards. It would take too much time right now. It sets up a build and a deployment pipeline. Everything is based on the command line tool, and it automatically issues pull requests for the respective environment. That's the GitOps process, which is implemented by Jenkins-X. It runs with different Kubernetes providers. It contains a lot of tools. It uses Helm, Scaffold, some other things. It can also work together with Let's Encrypt. It provides some repositories automatically, but can also work with some existing repositories if you have some already in place. And it also can interact with issue trackers like the GitHub issue tracker or Jira or Gitty or some others. In the future, I think it's already implemented. It's also able to work with multiple Kubernetes clusters. And in the future, it will also be able to perform canary deployments together with a service mesh like Istio. Okay, it provides a lot of build packs. There is a large list which is already provided, so almost any programming language can be built, can be used with Jenkins-X, and it also in the future might work with .NET and Windows deployments if you have a particular builder on your cloud, maybe on Azure or so. Okay. The Jenkins-X community is adding some additional stuff. You can easily run Prometheus or a web IDE like Theia or Eclipse-K, or you can integrate with SonarQube for your quality assurance. You can put everything into Jenkins-X. In the future, there is an add-on mechanism or a plug-in mechanism, and you can easily, from the command line, add these tools to your build pipelines or build environment. I showed the classic approach with Jenkins-X running as a service in Jenkins, with Jenkins running as a service in Jenkins-X. The future is different. They will make use of Tecton CD for the build pipeline. So, in particular, the build or the Jenkins-X of the future, or it's currently already the default, is so to say Jenkinsless. There is not even a Jenkins running within Jenkins-X. It's just running the builds with Tecton CD instead of the Jenkins pipeline engine. But you can replace that with the classic one if you want. Okay, so I think I'm slightly running out of time. Let's see what the promotion process does. Yeah, we can now see we have two applications running in staging and one application running in production. And this is here the second one in this kind of table. So we have one pod of the application running in production environment, and yeah, of course I should be able to open it. Yeah, and we see the same error page over here. And yeah, we see from the namespace that it's running in production. And yeah, I could have set up arbitrary other environments to get it to deploy it to. So I have a longer demo available. If you want, we could extend the session a little bit. I could show how Jenkins-X works in a developer mode, but for now I think I'm going to finish. I think I'm perfectly in time right now. You will find some additional information. Yeah, this is all of this stuff. I have some appendixes or appendices with a lot of links. If you need more information, there is a community established on Slack, for instance, and on the JenkinsX webpage, you will find a lot of demonstrations and videos how to set up JenkinsX and how to run it and how to make use of it. And also some additional articles from medium.com, etc. And the same holds true for GitOps. There is also a lot of stuff where you can go into more details about GitOps. Yeah. So I'm going to finish, and probably we have 2 minutes left for questions for the T-shirts. Remember that? Yes? Yeah, thanks for your talk. Oh, sorry. Maybe you can start and you can go on, okay?
Yeah. Working? Is it working? Yeah.
Yeah.
If somebody hates Helm and want to use Customize instead,
feel free to do that. It's an open source tool, and
how to integrate that step to customize YAML files in GitOps?
Well, JenkinsX is completely written in Go, and I have also provided some small extensions, and you could just replace Helm by Customize, I guess. I'm not familiar with Customize, so I do not know how much work it would be, but feel free to do so.
Okay.
So first shirt. Don't know if it fits, so probably you have to change later. You're welcome.
I have another question. We've been using Jenkins since forever. Not JenkinsX, but the classical Jenkins set up the classical way. We tried JenkinsX a couple of months ago, and the problem that we had mainly is that it looks like an all-in solution. So either you use Helm, Scaffold, Draft, Artifact.
It's very opinionated. In the beginning, you have to start more or less with the tools it provides, and then you have to look into it how to replace probably some things.
The problems that we have seen is that when something breaks, it's really difficult to debug. Okay, which point of this chain failed or broke, and especially like the JenkinsX CLI didn't give us a lot of confidence because it's sort of like a lot of magic hidden behind this JenkinsX create Spring. I wanted to know if there is a way to have an overview before running the command about what it's going to do, and also if there is a way, for example, to save the changes that JenkinsX is doing on your Kubernetes cluster, because right now I guess it's just applying resources, but can we export them somewhere? I mean, so that we have a constant like configuration as code.
Well, in the end, you have the infrastructure as code completely in the Helm charts for the environments. And JenkinsX, as I said, is also set up via a Helm chart, so you can customize the complete setup via Helm chart values. Thereby you have the complete setup within the Git repository in the end. For your first part of the question, I myself find it sometimes very difficult to debug it. That would be the second part of the demo. So if you want to stay for a few minutes afterwards, we could show how a developer can make use of JenkinsX to that extent, and then you probably get a better idea how it works internally and how you can make use of it as a developer, and how to check how the single steps in the process work.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So you get a shirt. Okay.
Hello. Thanks for your talk. I have so many questions, I don't know where to begin. Where exactly is the build executed? I mean, do I have to provide like a Docker image and then this container is spawned and then my software is built in that container, or how does it work?
It's just spawning a build container, a build pod, a Maven pod, so we can just check if it's still there. KC get pods in the JX namespace. We can just see which pods are there, and probably we still see kind of a fragment of a Maven process which performs the build. So everything is done in Kubernetes. Okay. You have more questions?
No. Yeah.
Okay, later. So you get a shirt and. Oh. Sorry. Yeah.
Hello?
Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Next one.
Let's say I want to build want to write my own build pack. And let's say this build pack expects some asset deployed to the cluster, let's say a testing tool or so. So if I create now as a user, apply this build pack, is there some way to automatically also deploy this asset or make sure it's deployed? Or is it more like a documentation you have to write?
The build pack in the end is just a Docker container or a Docker image which is running the build. And so you could prepare any Docker image with any assets you need, with any build tool or test tool, etc. And then run the build process with your provided Docker image for the build.
So my understanding, the build pack basically is a Git repository where it's just some files and then it's applied.
It's not a Git repository itself. It's also containing a prepared Docker image like this one for this Maven process here. So it's a simple image which just contains Maven. There are other images which contain whatever Maven and Node.js and etc. You saw the large list I was providing, and you can add your own build packs to extend Jenkins-X for that purpose. Okay. Someone else?
Yeah, please. We also evaluated the Jenkins-X a couple of months ago. The problem, or the reason why we declined it, we couldn't actually configure Jenkins-X with our in-house Bitbucket. Could you confirm that it works? Have you actually tried to?
I did try that myself.
Because we got some weird failures about Git, some missing plugins for Git, not to Bitbucket, but documentation says it supports Bitbucket. So any updates?
Did you try to get support on Slack?
Yeah, we opened the ticket, no response.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes I have the same experience, but as I said, it's an open source tool. It's run by a small community at CloudBees, and they hope for contributions. I have solved some of the problems I found myself. As usual, sometimes this happens. I'm also waiting for some for some stuff to find someone who takes it over. Sometimes it takes some time.
And maybe the similar question, plans about Customize? Do you plan to integrate it to support Customize?
I think this was the same question as you had. I have no idea if it's on the roadmap already. You could just ask for an enhancement, but yeah.
Thank you.
The easiest way is if someone is going to apply that himself. Okay. So, my last shirt, if you want. Any more questions? So, otherwise, I still have some stickers, if you like. Any more questions? Yes? There is this box. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Is it also possible to reduce the number of pods, because some are complementary, like Docker Registry and Nexus and so?
Yeah,
would also help.
The default is that it sets up everything. I think you can disable them with in the Helm chart. So in the Helm values for the JenkinsX environment, you can disable some of the repository. I think you cannot disable all of them, but I think for most of them it should be possible. And then you have to provide some URL for it. For instance, if you have your own Artifactory or Nexus running, you have to provide an URL and credentials to access it, etc. But this can be customized from the Helm chart or by the Helm chart. Okay, someone else? So, come here, pick some stickers. You wanted one, I promised you.
Thanks.